You've seen the movies, right? The 300 Spartans, these massive, epic, slow-motion battles. Well, if that's your picture of the Greco-Persian Wars, you're definitely not alone. But the real story? Oh, it's so much more fascinating. We're talking about brilliant administrators, genius tactics, and a clash of civilizations that literally shaped the world we live in today. All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we're going to meet the guy who built the Persian Empire, Darius. Then, we'll get into his son, Xerxes, and separate the Hollywood hype from reality. After that, the tables turn with Alexander the Great. And finally, we'll look at the incredible legacy of this East-West divide that started it all. Okay, so first up is Darius, and we're not starting with a big battle scene, nope. We're starting with the man who built the Persian Empire into, well, a global superpower. You know, in all the Greek stories, he's kind of this shadowy villain in the background, but in reality, Darius was an absolute game changer. So, I want you to think about this for a second. What if the so-called villain of the story was actually an organizational genius? Seriously, long before any of the famous wars even kicked off, Darius was busy creating an empire that was bigger and more sophisticated than anything the world had ever seen. He wasn't just a conqueror, he was a builder. He was creating a system that was meant to last. So, how'd he do it? Just look at this list. I mean, it is a total masterclass in how to build an empire. Darius got something that a lot of other conquerors missed. Brute force just isn't enough. So what did he do? He set up this brilliant system of provinces, they were called satrapies, with a kind of checks and balances to make sure no local governor got too powerful. He created a central tax collector to bring in massive amounts of cash for all his huge projects, and then he tied the whole thing together with things like the royal road and the world's first popular coin system. This wasn't just about taking over land. This was about building a stable global power from the absolute ground up. And get this, the scale of his vision was just stunning. We're talking about a 1,600-mile paved superhighway. Think about that. It even had 111 rest stations with fresh horses waiting. This was basically the central nervous system of the empire, a lifeline connecting everything. And this was long before the Romans got famous for their roads. Darius did it first. And if that wasn't enough, he also popularized the idea of using coins for money. You had the gold darak, yep, named right after him, and the silver siglos. Think about that shift from just trading goods to using a standard currency. It changed commerce forever. I mean, Darius really did leave a massive footprint on the world. All right, so from the builder, let's jump to his son, Xerxes. This is where we get into the big invasion of Greece and where we really have to start separating what you've seen in the movies from what history tells us. Because, you know, this is where the story gets super dramatic and also super distorted. Okay, the first and biggest myth we have to bust right away is the numbers. The movie version, which comes from the Greek historian Herodotus, claims Xerxes had something like 1.7 million soldiers. Now, modern historians, they look at that and say, no way. The real number was probably closer to 50, maybe 100,000 soldiers. Now, don't get me wrong, that's still a huge army for the time, but it's not the endless ocean of people you see on screen. And this brings up a really crucial point. We have to read these ancient Greek accounts with a healthy dose of skepticism. As one expert, Dr. Donald Fowler, puts it, they are utterly tendentious, which is a fancy way of saying they are super biased. This wasn't history like we think of it today. It was more like wartime propaganda. It was written to make the Greeks look awesome and their victory seem like an impossible miracle. Okay, so what about the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae? That was absolutely real, and yes, it was incredibly heroic, no question. But here's the key. Its main purpose wasn't to win the war then and there. It was a delaying tactic, a holding action. It was all about buying just enough time for the Athenian fleet to get away and get ready for what was going to be the real fight. And that fight, that was the naval battle of Salamis. You know, Marathon gets all the attention, but this was the battle that really saved the West. Seriously, it was one of those moments in history where absolutely everything was on the line. So how on earth did the Greeks pull it off? Well, it was a pure strategic masterpiece. It was a trap. They tricked the massive Persian fleet into a super narrow channel of water. Suddenly, the Persians' biggest advantage, their size, became their biggest weakness. The smaller, quicker Greek ships could just zip around them, causing total chaos and destroying the fleet. And just like that, Xerxes' navy was gone. His supply line was cut. He had no other choice. He had to go home. So for decades after that incredible victory, things kind of simmered down. The Persian Empire started getting weaker, and the Greeks, well, they went back to fighting each other. But then, everything changed. The tables turned completely with the arrival of one of the biggest names in all of history, Alexander the Great. You could say this was round two. And in just a handful of years, Alexander completely dismantled the entire empire that Darius had so carefully built. It wasn't easy. It took 3 huge, bloody battles. But after that final showdown at Gaugamela, the Persian Empire, as the world knew it, was basically over. But here's the thing. Alexander was a military genius, for sure, but his real secret weapon wasn't a sword or a new tactic. It was logistics. I mean, the man was an absolute master of supply lines. He could keep his army fed, armed, and fighting for years, deep, deep inside enemy territory. His opponents just couldn't figure out how he did it. He literally had his men take ships apart, haul them overland on rollers, and then put them back together to sail on rivers like the Tigris. That kind of thinking, that logistical genius, is what powered his incredible campaign. But Alexander wasn't just in it for the land and the gold. He had a much bigger mission. You could almost call him an apostle of Hellenism. His goal was to spread Greek culture, the language, the philosophy, the art, the ideas, all across the East. He wanted to fundamentally change the world he conquered, and he did that by building new Greek-style cities and leaving his soldiers behind to create these little pockets of Greek culture everywhere he went. Okay, so that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. What was the long-term result of this massive, ambitious cultural project? Well, it created a tension between East and West, a tension that you could argue has never really gone away. See, Alexander's big dream was to create one single, unified, Greek-ish world. But it only kind of worked. Hellenism had a huge impact, for sure, but it never managed to completely overwhelm the ancient, powerful cultures of the East. So instead of erasing the line between East and West, his conquests, in a weird way, actually made it sharper. It created this deep cultural and political fault line, and it left behind what Dr. Fowler calls a heritage of conflict. And so that leaves us with one final big question to think about. This ancient tension, this kind of tectonic plate of conflict, you can trace it all the way from the Persians and the Greeks, right through Alexander, the Romans, and all the way to modern times. So when you look at the world today, you have to ask, are we still seeing the ripples of these events that happened 2,500 years ago?